For more on this story, I'm joined by Dr. Ayman Youssef, the Professor of Conflict Resolution at the Arab American University of Palestine, who is joining us live from Jenin. First of all, thank you so much, Dr. Ayman, for speaking to us. Netanyahu is now publicly backing a 60-day truce that is tied directly to the disarmament of Hamas. How realistic, though, is a ceasefire deal at this stage? And what's the likelihood that both sides can actually agree before that window closes?
Yes, thanks for having me in this show. I think both parties, Hamas and Israel, are negotiating on the basis of win-lose situation or win-lose game. We have two possibilities or two scenarios. One of them really to reach a political deal in the coming days, and this political deal is being negotiated in Doha. Both parties, Israel and Hamas, are trying to improve the condition of negotiation in order to reach the best deal, in order to sell that to the Palestinian public opinion as well as to the Israeli public opinion. But my concern at this stage, Netanyahu is speaking in terms of full defeat and full surrender to Hamas. And Hamas, on the other hand, still believing they have some winning cards in there and some bargaining chips in their hands to further negotiate a good deal. So we have the two possibilities, either reaching a political deal or further military deterioration of situation in Gaza.
There are obviously a lot of stumbling blocks here, but despite these indirect talks that we're seeing in Doha and the US-backed proposal that's also on the table, what do you think is really preventing any sort of agreement? Is it the aid flow, the military withdrawal, Hamas's future role in Gaza? What do you think is the key issue here?
Yes, this is, I think, major strategic question, and I think we need a strategic debate around that. There are many hindrances and many stumbling blocks in the way of signing this deal. Not only the humanitarian aid distribution mechanism as Israel, and even, as Hamas demanded, I think also even the question of Israeli withdrawal from major corridors and major areas controlled by Israel, in the last 22 months. Israel now is controlling more than 70% of geography of Gaza, and they are trying to engineer, this geography as well as demography, in the sense that pushing the Palestinians into very much, closed zones, so that in the future maybe there is a plan of forced migration or pushing them maybe to Sinai or to the sea. I think this is part of the Israeli thinking. And there is also the issue of next day to the ceasefire. What are the possibilities, for Hamas? Is Hamas going to be part of governance, or is it part to be, outside Gaza? There are many issues, and I think many tricky issues that both parties are still negotiating. And I think the main concern at this stage, there is no trust, to have a deal. Both groups should have a kind of confidence building measures and a kind of good intentions and good trust. I think this issue is very much missing. So therefore, we need a kind of a strategic deal imposed either by the US or with the help of Qataris and Egyptians. If we leave matters to Hamas as well as to Israel, I think they are going to disagree.
Dr. Ayman, and we do hope a deal is reached if it can move forward. And you mentioned a bit about the future there. If we see the hostages freed, if we see Hamas weakened, how do you think this might reshape the rules of future confrontation? So if in the future it happens again between Israel and an armed Palestinian faction, do you think, well, maybe this is the beginning of the end? You did mention very briefly Hamas having a part in ruling Gaza going forward, but could this actually spell the end for Hamas?
Yes, I think yes. This also another major question. I think in the Israeli minds they have a plan for 10 years. And, 10 years in order not only to get rid of Hamas. It is not only a confrontation between Israel and Hamas. I think they are dealing with the threat coming from Gaza. Gaza in the Israeli mind and Israeli, strategic, thinking is a real threat, either with Hamas or free from Hamas. This huge number of population is considered to be a huge, a threat and a huge risk for Israel. Therefore, I think the Israelis are not going to get rid of Hamas and armed groups. Maybe another group will rise up more, more radical, more fundamentalist, and in this way, it again, pose a kind of a threat to Israel. The Israelis are using this current confrontation not only to settle dispute or conflict with Hamas, they are trying also to settle dispute even with ordinary Palestinians, the whole idea of the Palestinian entity. And because of that, this conflict has some strong, implications and repercussions, even, for West Bank, for Palestinian, entity and the future Palestinian state in the Palestinian territories.
Dr. Ayman, talk to me about the feeling on the ground. Israel obviously says Hamas must be stripped of all governing capability, of all military capabilities. But if that does happen, what are the effects? What do you think we'll see in the West Bank? Tensions are already very, very high there. Israeli operations are ongoing. So what would be the feelings on ground if that does happen?
Yes, many bloody, many bloody scenarios. The confrontation and the battle is going on between the Palestinians and the Israeli side. The Israeli side, the regular army, as well as, the colonial settlers who are, everywhere in West Bank, more than 800,000 Israeli settlers. They have their own army of organized, 100,000, who are carrying, weapons. They are doing all dirty works, and they are part of the political agenda of this government. They are the electoral basis for Bligvir, Smotrich, and Netanyahu. Therefore, I think the tension will rise up, will have more incidents, and will have more clashes between the Palestinians and the Israeli colonial settlers. I think we'll have also more confiscating of land and even annexation of Jordan Valley. Jordan Valley constitute more than 40% of the West Bank, and it is part of Area C. Therefore, I think Israeli government, the Israeli, right, Likud-led government will use this huge opportunity to settle scores and to settle disputes with the Palestinians by taking unilateral measures and unilateral actions and direct control of this Area C, and therefore cornering the Palestinians and pushing around 400,000 Palestinians staying in Area C, push them to major towns and cities in West Bank.
Dr. Ayman Youssef, thank you so much for joining us and talking to us today.